Hey everyone, I see we have a few folks coming in right now. Welcome. We will get started here in just a moment. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to wait for kind of a critical mass of people to join in here, and then we will get started with our session today. Thanks again for joining us. Awesome. I see we have some more folks joining now. Welcome. As I just said, we'll get started here in just a moment. We're just going to give folks a minute or two to join, and we'll start just a couple minutes past the hour. Really excited for the session today. Thank you all for joining, and we will get started here very shortly. Great. Well, it looks like we have a fair amount of people on here already. So I will kick us off and get us started here. Again, welcome and thank you to everyone joining here. My name is Blake Grubbs. I'm the head of marketing here at Logic.io. I'll be facilitating the panel conversation that we have going on here today with our guests from Logic and from Argano. Really excited for this conversation today on Omnichannel everywhere, how to evolve your sales strategy with commerce and CPQ digital transformation. This will be a panel style conversation, so super interactive here with our expert panelists. One just quick housekeeping note, we will be recording this session and we will be sending it out to all attendees after the fact. So you will get that recording as well as the slides too. So we will send those over as quickly as we can after. Another housekeeping note, please go ahead and drop any questions throughout the session in the question and answer in the Q&A box below. Add those in there and we will address those questions at the end of the session. So go ahead and drop those in there as the conversation happens, and we'll make sure to address those at the end. Great. Well, I will start by just kicking off our agenda today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers and the companies that they're at. We'll then go ahead and just do a quick introduction of our topic today on Omnichannel everywhere. And then from there, we'll quickly jump into our guided discussion with our panelists, which should be great. And at the end, we will go into our audience Q&A. So like I said, please drop questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll make sure to get to those at the end. Awesome. Well, I wanted to start off by first introducing the two companies that are represented here today on the panel, and then I'll introduce our speakers. So we're lucky enough to have two great speakers today, experts in their field from Argano. Argano is a next generation business and technology service provider that helps to build digital foundations and help businesses run better. Argano describes themselves as being purpose-built for the digital renaissance, right? Which means that they're leveraging innovation to help leaders implement complex solutions. And in this case, across CPQ, CRM, ERP, commerce, right? All of those types of applications. So we're really lucky to have them and their expertise in-house today, a global company that's done a lot of this type of work. So excited to have Amardeep and Oscar on here. And then we also have Fazil from Logic.io. Logic is what we describe ourselves as a commerce logic engine, which is a solution that helps enable businesses to sell their products and services more effectively, not only through their direct sales teams, but through digital commerce channels as well. And we do so by helping provide a more guided, flexible, and consumerized selling experiences across CPQ and commerce applications. So to go back to our guests here from Argano, Amardeep Bhatia is joining us here today. Excited to have Amardeep on. Amardeep is the Salesforce practice head at Argano, where he spent, I think, over 13 years and is responsible for ensuring successful delivery across all Salesforce applications and projects, essentially, including CRM, Sales Cloud, Communities, CPQ, Service Cloud, et cetera. So excited to have Amardeep's expertise represented here on the webinar today. We also have Oscar Gonzalez from Argano. Oscar is the Global Commerce Director at Argano Kest, and he has an extensive background in helping companies take their digital commerce strategies to the next level. So a big part of what we'll be talking about here with the Omnichannel experience, Oscar will be able to lend his expertise as part of that. And then lastly, we have Fazil, who I mentioned. Fazil is the VP of product here at Logic. He has over a decade of experience in the CPQ space in particular, and just working with enterprise software applications in general, where he's helped develop, implement, and scale hundreds of CPQ projects. So excited to have Fazil on to lend his expertise from the Logic side here as well. Great. Well, we'll jump right into the topic here, and then we'll hand it over to our speakers. Just to set the stage, the topic our panel will focus on today is really the shift to omni-channel, especially in B2B selling that we're seeing today, and how technology can help address these challenges that companies are having when it comes to creating a more omni-channel experience for their business, right? We're seeing more and more transactions shifting from sales-led transactions to self-service and hybrid led transactions today. And B2B businesses are constantly needing to reevaluate and evolve what their buying experience looks like that they're delivering to their customers and the flexibility of those experiences. So as you can see by the stats we have laid out here, buyers are willing more and more to shift to this omni-channel way of buying and actually prefer it. So that's what we'll be getting into today on our panel. So we will go right into it and kick it off. The first question that I have for the panel here, going off of that, and we'll start fairly broadly here, right, is how are B2B buyer preferences changing, right? We just saw those stats on the last page that show how consumers and how customers are willing to buy a little bit differently. But wanted to start off by getting the point of view from each of you on how those are changing. So Amardeep, I'll start with you. Why don't you kick us off here?
All right, thanks for the introduction, Blake. And certainly, B2B and B2C buying experience, there were boundaries in the past which are starting to blur now. They are starting to look alike. B2B buyers expect a B2C kind of experience, which is digitally self-enabled. Now, this was always happening as part of the digital evolution that we live in, but it has really caught pace and come to a wider relevance during the pandemic.
Awesome. Yeah, I think what's been accentuated by the pandemic has played a big part in this. Fazil, I want to pass it over to you now. What's your take on this?
Yep. Thanks, Blake. Actually, what Amardeep said is absolutely true. I think the trend of B2B buyers changing was actually happening even before pandemic, but pandemic really kind of acted as a catalyst and kind of caused that acceleration of that change happening faster. I think but the interesting part was I think last year there was a recent study by McKinsey, which was looking at post-pandemic where things are stabilizing. And it looked at 60% of the buyers in B2B are more comfortable and find online buying experience more convenient. So that's almost like coming out of the pandemic as things started to settle down to normal, the new normal changed than what it was before. And it probably got accelerated by 3 to 4 years, I think is true. And I think the biggest thing which people realized when they were kind of forced to have asynchronous communication with each other in the pandemic world, working remotely or talking remotely, they realized the contextual information which is available for them to be available online when they are accessing information online. Systems can know a lot more about them, and the entire buying experience can be frictionless. So that has been a big change in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Oscar, we'd love to get your take on this as well.
Yeah, I think that I agree that B2C and B2B and B2C solutions are blurring now. We have seen customers over the last couple of years asking us for both experiences living together, which it was rare before. Another thing that happened in the last couple of years is that new industries were pushed into e-commerce. And traditionally, those industries were comfortable on the brick and mortar side, but now that they need to be able to reach their customers, whether that's on a B2B fashion or B2C, they want a solution that works for them, and it changed the landscape because now we need to offer solutions that are applicable to all the different industries.
Yeah, I think that's really an important point there, how this is affecting all industries. And it kind of leads me into my next question, which is around, how are B2B businesses actually getting ahead of this this trend in commerce that we're seeing and that you just mentioned here, Oscar? And are those businesses seeing competitive advantages based on your experience with the clients that you work with and the customers that you see and just the market knowledge that you have? Would love to, and I'll kick it back to you on this, Oscar. Are you seeing that B2B businesses who pursue this are seeing competitive advantages in the market?
For sure. I think that the more they are in a position where they can adapt and change as quickly as the world is changing, the better. We have seen that our clients that have the most advanced roadmaps to incorporate all the new features that are coming up, that are flexible and quickly to change, see the most of the return of their investment. So I think that that's one of the things that we have seen more. The more digital the business becomes, the better for them.
Yep, makes sense. Fazil, I'll pass over to you. I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but what's your take on this?
Yeah, definitely. I have strong views, as you can imagine, being part of Logic about this. But one of the things I think is, as happens with any kind of transition, right? I think customers or buyers are kind of in different camps. Like one camp which is in, I would say, denial mode. Like they are thinking the current set is good. They can make their current sales channel efficient, or their products are just so different that can never be sold online. Then there are the ones who I call as dabblers. Like they're starting to look at e-commerce, but it's almost like, let's have an online presence so that we can say me too, but more than that, not really investing seriously in that. And I think then the third bucket is a set of buyers who are starting to look at it seriously as a path of the future and starting to see where they can actually gain competitive advantage because of the online channel. And when you think about the competitive advantages, I think it's a shift which takes a while in some ways, but there's already a level of outreach which customers are able to get because of online channels, which is much bigger, right? That kind of goes without saying. But what I think is happening is the cost curve is starting to shift down, where the cost of servicing, the marginal cost of servicing customer over time can go down. So if you ask me, like, I think there was a data point by Gartner, I think last year around that by 2025, 80% of the B2B sales will happen through digital channels. And if you think about like in 2 years from now or 3 years from now, with that kind of a shift in the market share, people whose cost curve is much lower because they started investing thoughtfully in online channels today will have a strong advantage. It's almost like the change which happened in B2C, if you remember, late 90s and early 2000s. It was more costly to run an e-commerce site, but in 5 years, the costs became so low that the traditional businesses could not even compete. So I think that's how the competitive advantages will play.
Yeah, I think the cost piece of it is something that kind of goes overlooked sometimes. Amardeep, what's your take on this as well?
Look, the reality is, just like B2C, now B2B buyers are starting to get spoiled with choice. So just having a great product is not enough anymore, right? You need to leave a enhanced buying experience. You need to differentiate. And that differentiation happens with your digital presence. How you make the overall buying and self-service process more efficient so that buyers who want to do business with you, they can do the business the time of their choice and the platform of their choice. And like Fazil mentioned, asynchronous interactions, right? They don't want to be something, who doesn't want to cut down phone calls and personal meetings, going to Starbucks these days. So overall, the competitive advantage, of course, is wider reach. Then it's easier to buy. So buyers are going to spend more. And then overall customer satisfaction is going to increase, right? So you're going to have more repeat, more reordering over the process.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, in that your experience in meeting those buyer experiences can be a differentiator just as much as your products can. Kind of leads me into my next question here, and a question that we had in the chat here as well, which is, okay, the shift is happening, right? And it gives companies a competitive advantage. How do companies go ahead and start to approach this shift with technology solutions, right? And what are kind of some of the biggest challenges that you see with some of these common technologies that are used, such as commerce and CPQ in particular, right? Which is what, here on this panel, we have expertise in. Curious as to how you all view that. And Fazil, I'll start it with you. What's your opinion here?
Sure. I think traditionally, as companies thought about, selling in B2B, they thought a lot about the term quote to cash. I'm sure many of all my esteemed panelists and many of the attendees today are familiar with that term, right? I think one of the things which is starting to happen as people think about omni-channel seriously is that term itself needs to be revised. Like quote to cash kind of became very siloed to the sales experience or the seller's experience. And companies really need to start thinking about that buyer experience in a more holistic manner, right? So we talk about customer touch points. How do you think about across all channel touch points? And you need people at the right level. So you need the right kind of leaders in the company or the executive sponsor for such a program to think about a more holistic buyer experience and think about all the things like channel conflicts and others in a more serious manner and more broader sense rather than managing their sellers and distributors. I think that's kind of a big change which needs to happen right at the get-go. And another change which I think at least companies who are starting to look at it seriously are starting to see is that you need to think about that administrator persona experience, right? So ultimately, yes, we can all have our magic wand and we can claim all technologies are magical. There is real work and real maintenance which customers end up looking at for their systems they deploy for years. And when you think about an omni-channel scenario, the complexity factor is higher. So thinking about how your administrator experience is going to be done across those applications which are working across the channels becomes more critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to kind of shift the way that we've thought about quote to cash for the last decade, and is certainly kind of at that point now. Amardeep, I want to get your take on this as well.
Sure. So I think the stats is most of the B2B buyers felt the process is too complicated, too painful today, the traditional process. So what really needs to be done is take those complexities away or reduce it as much as you can and make it a more seamless buying experience, make it more comfortable for the buyers, right? How do we do that? With CPQ and commerce coming together, what we really gain there is a guided process for B2B buyers, right? They can see what they're buying, they can configure what they're buying, and they have the visibility to the process end to end with seamless integration within CPQ and commerce, right? They do the checkout process, they know where is their order, what they have reordered, when is it delivered. So they have the complete holistic approach now with the guided process at their fingertips. So that what that does is that really makes it an agile and flexible process for them. And that's what buyers need today. They need to feel as a part of the process overall, not just somebody will call me and let me know what's happening. So it's all about, and then talk about self-service options. They can inquire easily, they can chat easily, they can, there is various channels for making an inquiry or browsing an article to self-service options. So it's overall a supreme experience with CPQ and commerce integrated end-to-end.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that kind of train of thought of self-service, Oscar, curious to hear, especially from the commerce side of the house, how you think about this.
I think the key is in creating a recipe for success that works for each customer, right? We have a great products that we can help implement. We have the experience to make that happen, but we also need the partnership of our clients to share the context they live in, open their mind to the new techniques that we might bring to help, and then working together, we can achieve that. I think that one of the most common mistakes we have seen in the past is where we want to apply techniques that were used 20 years ago to today's solutions, and that's usually something that delays our projects. In this case, what we suggest is let's work within the context of our customers, and that's usually a better solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I'm hearing all three of you say is kind of being stuck in, the best way from 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's now more than ever time to shift the perspective on how those challenges are addressed. So really good perspective there. That moves me into our next question here, which is, I'm sure we have folks from different industries and different walks of life here on the call. Are there particular industries or particular categories that you think that this trend and this rise of omni-channel is particularly important, or is this something that we're seeing, with your clients and customers across all industries? And I'll start it off with you, Fazil. Curious as to what you think on this.
Sure. I think reality is that initially people think that the change is going to start in industries or with customers who may be facing more existential questions or are more desperate to figure out new ways because of the increased competition or the way their industry is changing. But reality is that the trend of consumerization and the buyer expectations on what they want to do when they are buying a product and the experience they want to get is happening across all industries. In fact, I mean, without aging myself, I'll let you know I'm a millennial, and one of the things I was reading recently is there are 44% of millennials, they actually prefer buying in B2B setting without having to talk to a sales rep. So I don't know what that tells about our generation, but it is a stat which is worthwhile to know that more and more people really want to have that online interaction, which doesn't really involve human unless there is a clear value add which is happening, right? And because of that trend and because of this buyer going, the generation which is becoming the buyers now, having this kind of a psyche, the trend is across all industries, at least in my view.
Yeah, interesting. And I think as a millennial myself, I can say that's probably true, even more than 44% of the time, probably. Amardeep, curious as to your thoughts here.
Yeah, just adding on to what Fazil said, consumerization in B2B space is happening across industries now. So the truth is, yeah, some industries are ahead. They realize it sooner. Some are catching up, but it's happening across industries. There is a need to go mobile. All users need added mobility with the digital experience that we talk about. And it's not just limited to the buying experience anymore. It's the overall customer experience. Other areas like field service, customer support, reordering process, and contract amendments, renewals. It's happening across. So I would say in all industries use these things, right? So my point is, yeah, it's starting to show across all industries, and then it's become a need, not just something someone wants to have.
Yeah, Oscar, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think that this shift should be embraced, and we should be flexible to change. Right. One of the things I advise everyone is when we talk about best practices, my usual answer is there are best practices and there are best practices for you. Choosing the right one for you and your context, I think that's the most important advice, and that's the starting point for us in any project.
Yeah, I think that's really important, is that we can't approach the same problems for everyone the same way. Everyone has their own unique business needs. So that's a good takeaway there. Leads me into this next question, right? Going a little bit more into the weeds, which is around, what are some of the more common technical challenges you've seen that kind of prevent companies from being able to deliver on this omni-channel experience, right? I imagine, especially for companies who have complex infrastructures, who have, highly customized and, homegrown things as part of their stack, there's challenges to evolving the way that they go to market, right? And the way that they craft these customer experiences, like we've been talking about. Amardeep, I'll start with you. What do you see here with the folks that you work with and what you've seen in the market?
Yeah, from what my experience shows me, the number one challenge that we have come across is around data and integrations, right? All of these companies today who are starting to embrace the digital footprint, they have their data spread across multiple systems, some homegrown, some bought and purchased. But the point is, now there is not a single view of customer, and it especially multiplies when you have multiple BUs that are doing business with the same customer. So you don't get a single view of the customer. You don't know what they're buying elsewhere. So you don't know how to provide them a unified experience across these channels and across the BUs. So it becomes very important to build a roadmap where you are putting a strong emphasis upfront on how you connect these data channels with each other. And also from your customer standpoint, their experience becomes much better when they know they're talking to the same company, whether it's one B or the other, and they understand, the company understands my needs, my preferences. So it's again a part of overall customer experience.
Yeah, and I think that connected customer, like you said, is a trend certainly, and a connected enterprise to meet that connected customer is super important. Fazil, I'll pass it to you from there too. What's your take?
I think what Amardeep said about data syndication, or like having that connected view of the customer, is very critical, right? I think that definitely goes without saying that when you look at this multi-channel strategy or omni-channel strategy, it becomes important to at least have one view of your core entities like customer and your accounts, your leads. You need to be able to syndicate that really well. One, though I have a different view on some of these aspects, because what I think technologically speaking, right, as you said, we are in the weeds, so I'll go more technical on that. I think applications historically over last 20, 30 years have evolved really well in the data model part of the stack, right? People think a lot about data model, they think a lot more about workflows, and the thinking kind of gets limited there. What happens is, as you start thinking about servicing these new channels in the way customers are expecting, you need to think about more innovative things which are available today, just customers are not used to it anymore, right? So people are not really looking at the way they can leverage the compute layer so much more effectively in these public cloud arena, where there's so many services available, how you can plug and play that together, and what that skill set requires, right? So there is a level of technical understanding needed to understand the web at a next level than it was understood before, which hasn't happened. People still kind of get stuck, as I say, in the world of system of record, right? Which can be abstracted, and that abstraction layer is becoming very, very critical. Because if you really want to give buyers what they want, sometimes it's not possible to align everything which is happening in your back office with your front office. Your ability to manage that, it becomes kind of a win or lose key point in your win or loss of that customer.
Yeah, Oscar, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that one of the most challenging parts is to make sure that you have the right team with the right experience that can help implement this solution. I think that other than the technical complexity that these solutions bring, we need to create a team that has done it before. We can provide that experience, but we also need experience on each one of the third parties that might work on this complex solution, or our customers to help us get there. And that's usually something that we need to quantify as well, the amount of experience that we have for every project.
Yeah, absolutely. And that does bring me into the last question here. Kind of getting each of your final takes here, right? I think that everything you guys have shared so far has been super insightful. For companies who are deciding to go down this road of creating these better omni-channel experiences and better connected experiences, as we've described here, from your guys' experience in working through some of these projects, what are some of those key mistakes or key things that folks should keep in mind as they're starting to engage in these projects and start to go down this road? And Amardeep, I'll throw it back to you to get us started on this.
Sure, Mike. One of the aspects, again, what we are trying to achieve here is a better customer experience overall. So it's very important to put the right foundation in place. A lot of times we hear customers want to start small as they build their roadmap. But starting small is good. You need to identify what's impactful as well, right? What is really making impact to your B2B buyers overall experience-wise. So you need to identify the characteristics, and it's different by each business and their need, right? So it's very important to identify data and the features that are going to be most impactful, and then build your roadmap accordingly. Second thing, one more thing that I've noticed is change management overall, or change management, both inward as well as outward. So it's very important to keep your people well informed of the change that's coming up and make them participate in it in a good way. they need to understand how it's going to change their lives for better and the lives of their customers for better going forward. It's not one or the other, it goes together, right? So, and also it's important to train them well in advance so that they understand what's coming up and they participate with all their experience of the business to bring in, and then they work towards with a vendor like us to build a system that's usable and has high adoption from the right get-go.
Great. Fazil, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I would say, I think the need to take a long-term view in 3 key dimensions is going to become critical for customers to win in this new world of omni-channel. First one, I think, as Amardeep and I think Oscar had mentioned a while back, I think the right team, the right people, and the right leader becomes important. So people part becomes important. The skills you need to train or the skills you need to hire. Companies really need to think about omni-channel first and kind of build a strategy for that. Number one. Number two, I think, is the process. So as we talked about things like abstraction, like keeping buyer at the center becomes very critical for you to kind of come up with your new buying or selling process, as you may look at it, to see how you will achieve the most optimal experience for the customers. And last but not the least, I think there is an element of that due diligence of the products you need to look at from a long-term view so that you're getting the right foundation. I think Amardeep used that term. The foundation becomes very important. So you don't want to ignore that for a short-term view, like taking a myopic view of saving costs right now. You want to start small, but have that long-term view and start identifying those critical technology elements you need to succeed in omni-channel long-term.
Great. And Oscar, we'll wrap up with you here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the common pitfalls is that try to do everything at once. I think that your business has to evolve, incorporating all these pieces and all these solutions, and creating a sensible roadmap that tackles one problem at a time and test it and then continue with the next. That's usually a better solution. We have seen different implementations that follow this approach. We had a bigger success than if you just want to get everything and just make it work all at once.
Yeah, I think that's an important takeaway that we heard kind of from all 3 of you here, iterate in different ways. Great. Well, this has been super insightful. So thank you all of you for helping to share your insights here. We're going to move right into the Q&A. We do have a few questions that came in, so we'll start to address those here. But did also want to put folks' contact information up here and how to contact our different and reach our different companies up here as well. I'll go right into the Q&A to start here. We had one question that came in that kind of got brought up earlier. Which technologies are the most commonly used systems to help support this shift to omni-channel selling? And of course, we've talked about CPQ a little bit. We've talked about commerce a little bit. But Fazil, I think I'll start with you on this. In your opinion, which technologies are most commonly used to help support this shift with omni-channel?
Well, I think this one goes without saying, and that might be the assumption also. Like the first, I think, is the cloud in general, like having cloud-based applications rather than trying to figure out how to get your on-prem applications to work in omni-channel, I think is probably critical element just to set the right foundation. As we talked about, I think having the right CPQ systems and your commerce systems in the picture is very critical. Like those will become really important as sort of the channels. But I think the other aspect, if I think about technology more broadly, is more around the way technologies support an integration or working in an ecosystem really well becomes important. So if you think about more microservices-based applications going forward, right? Some of that or applications which kind of support an API-first approach or headless technology approach becomes very important for you to bring into your tech ecosystem or your enterprise architecture, because you don't know how they may need to plug and play. And if you're investing in those technologies front for your in-house applications or what you're buying off the market, that becomes critical.
Makes sense. Any thoughts from either of you, Amardeep or Oscar, on this?
Sure, I'll go. It's very important, of course, goes without saying, to be able to serve and manage your customer better, you need to have the right CRM in place. right? Then only you can build guided sales and self-service and commerce, the things we talked about, including CPQ. So it starts with the right foundational data elements captured very well in your CRM system. Then you put layers of customer service. How do you really enable that self-service? Then you CPQ and commerce. So commerce layer provides the overall experience, the customer experience that we have been focusing on. So functionally, these are bare minimums that now again, this could be part of your overall roadmap, but this is where you need to go, right? And then connected systems need some level of mature services, APIs, microservices that Fazil touched upon. So how do you really enable that as we build? It cannot be an afterthought. It has to be thought upfront. Doing that upfront due diligence, analysis, assessment, build a good roadmap becomes very important to implement the technologies that I talked about.
Great, great. Any thoughts from you, Oscar, on this, or echoing a lot of what these guys said?
Yeah, I think that what we're talking about, headless solutions, flexibility, I think that that's one of the key themes that we have seen in the last couple of years. Regardless of your roadmap, things are going to change. So the more you are ready for that, the more your platforms and solutions that you're creating are ready for change, the more you're going to be in a position to succeed and beat the competition.
Got it. We have one more question that just came in around common limitations of commerce platforms. So Oscar, I might direct this back to you here. The question is, how do you go about choosing a commerce platform? And what are some of the kind of common limitations of commerce platforms that you see that might make it challenging for customers, and how do they overcome that?
I think that there's two variables that I always consider first, and there are many, of course, but in the sake of time, one is your size. There are different platforms that are designed for the size of your business, so you need to aim for that. And if you choose a smaller platform, you might not get all the features. If you choose a bigger one, it's going to be a drag until you get to that size. And the other one is choose the platform that has the features that your experience is looking for. Many times we go for headless or mobile solutions, and that's great, and you probably need some of that. But the first and most important factor is for you to design your experience first, and then go after the commerce platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's starting with experience. That makes sense. Fazil, any thoughts from you on that, or Amardeep as well?
So I think what Oscar said is very true. I think the one thing which I've seen, at least in my experience working with customers and in this space, is sometimes customers buy commerce solution and then they try to overfit the problem on the solution they bought, right? So commerce is good for building some of those experiences, but they may not be good for solving all the problems. So some customers start thinking about solving their PLM problems, product lifecycle management problems, using commerce solution as an example. I think that can become a problem, especially if you have products which have a lot of options, a lot of customization configuration. Trying to just fit that in your commerce solution can backfire pretty badly, can make your entire implementation go at risk. Plus, there are similar factors like applying use cases which are not natural for a system is probably the biggest thing I've seen with commerce systems and around catalog mainly.
Makes sense. Any of that bringing true for you as well, Amardeep?
Yeah, one thing I'll just add on to what my friends said here. Again, another important factor is how easy it is to integrate into your existing landscape. If you're going with CPQ, if you have a certain ERP that your users are used to working and functioning with, how easy it sits on top of these, right? How does it make it more flexible and great customer experience going forward? That's a key component as well, and then choosing the right team to implement it.
Great. Yeah, I think those last 2 points that you mentioned on integration and having the right team are really important ones for us to end on here. So I think we've gotten through the questions here. For those folks still on the line, you have the information here of the panelists here. Feel free to reach out to Argano or Logic as well for any specific questions about how we can help you all with these projects that we're talking about here today. Just want to Once again, thank you, Amardeep, Oscar, and Fazil for speaking on this panel today. I think this was super insightful, and I think the audience got a lot out of it. So thank you all again for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for hosting us, Blake. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks. And thank you to everyone here who attended. This recording will get sent out later on today. Thank you all for joining. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.